Welcome back to the Severe MMA YouTube channel for episode 8 recap of The Ultimate Fighter Season 32. It is yours truly, Theo Lander here. I'm very excited to break down this episode because we finally have the Ultimate Fighter debut of one Paddy McCrory, Belfast's own. He was the 2023 Severe MMA Emerging Irish Prospect of the Year, one of the most prestigious awards in mixed martial arts. So that should tell you how good Paddy McCrory is. And we are going to break down his fight, which was quite the thriller. But before that, we're going to talk about the more reality side of things as we kick off this episode, not at the Ultimate Fighter House as we usually do, but actually at the Apex or the Performance Institute. And we're speaking with Valentina Shevchenko, and she's talking about how she thinks that Paddy McCrory for a middleweight is particularly skilled at managing range, and that guys usually of that size are not that great with understanding distance and the timing of those things and when to enter into range. But she really has a lot of great things to say about him and his abilities. Says that he'll be a really good challenge for Mark Hume as well. Enter Mark Hume, who describes his fighting style as more of wrestling into jiu-jitsu. Has obviously elevated his striking in the past couple of years, but absolutely a grappler first, and he doesn't hide away from that. He comes right out and says, he's not gonna strike with a striker. He's gonna take down Paddy if he has the opportunity to, and do his best work there. But then he does slip in this little quote here that says that he doesn't believe that Paddy belongs in the cage with him when it comes to grappling. Obviously he does hypothetically have that advantage over him, but I wouldn't go as far to say it's that big of a difference. Of course, these are fighters. This is them talking about their own abilities. Of course, like that they may have different perspectives than us, and they obviously are supposed to. They're supposed to believe in themselves to the nth degree. But I think everyone sort of sitting at home should sort of understand that that is not truly accurate. Anyways, we sort of get into learn a little bit more about Mark Hume here. Not too much. They sort of just kind of break over into his fighting history. And there are a lot. He is one of the more experienced guys in the Ultimate Fighter house. He's got a little bit over 15 professional fights. Most of those have come by way of the Extreme Fighting Championship in South Africa. He's sort of gone around to a couple different promotions during that time, but the brunt of his work was done with the EFC promotion. So yeah, we don't really spend too much time on him in the episode. We go right back to Shevchenko, who is having yet again another team outing. It seems like she's sort of making this a habit here. It feels like every episode these guys are getting a great experience in Las Vegas, and this time she takes them to do a nighttime helicopter ride over the Las Vegas Strip, which of course is all lit up at night. It's a beautiful sight to see. I have been lucky enough to fly over that at night commercially on a plane, which it's much further away than these guys were, so you can't really see much. So it was interesting to see their perspective here. I mean, they go right over the Sphere. It's an amazing view. They go right over MGM and that part of the strip, and over to the T-Mobile Arena as well. Rudy also brings up at this point that he's sort of using this as motivation because he's going to fight there one day, hopefully. So I think it's just a really good overall experience here. And I love the way that Shevchenko's taking care of her team. She got a little bit of bad PR in the first episode with the whole no drinking water during practice thing, which the criticisms were fair, absolutely. But it's good to see that Shevchenko is showing that she's not all hard on these guys, and she's trying to give them a piece of the good life as well while they're in there. So good stuff all around from Shevchenko. And it's now time to focus on Paddy McCrory and his background. So while they're on that helicopter trip, we cut back to the Ultimate Fighter house to see Team Grasso sort of bonding there in the kitchen. Paddy is pulling up pictures of his family, shows one in particular of himself, his grandfather, and his youngest brother holding the first title that Paddy ever won in mixed martial arts. He then brings up another photo where his grandmother's in the background and how, he keeps as a memento because she's passed. We're sort of getting into the history of his family, and it's something that he's going to bring up a couple of times this episode, which I think it kind of just goes to show you that like he's really grounded in his roots and he's a strong foundation. He even brings up his girlfriend of 2 years, who he makes sure to make a point that she has been very, very supportive of him throughout his fighting career. extremely important for a fighter to have, as we know, with the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of the fight game. You always need someone who's going to be solid right there for you at the whole time as the anchor. So it's great to hear that he's got this support system of his family around him. Brings up a couple of times that he just loves sitting on the couch with her and the dog just to relax. So Patty seems like he's got his head on straight here. He seems like he's in a good place mentally and he's ready for this challenge of being in the fighter house. But it is absolutely a challenge. But Patty is sort of showing us here that he sort of got the skills to pay the bills. He then does the part of the episode where the production team gives the fighters the camera to go to their hometown. And so Patty shows us West Belfast, and where he grew up, based on what he shows in the episode, is basically like a street or a block over from the Peace Wall. He was, like as he mentions, he was born at the end of the Troubles, so he says that he didn't really see much conflict by the time he came into the world, but that there's still like a lot of leftover generational trauma in his own words. He also mentions that even like when he was younger, just growing up in the area, that the Protestants and the Catholic kids, they wouldn't really mingle much. They weren't really friendly with each other. So he does let us into that part of his life as well, which was really interesting to get his perspective. Trains at Fight Academy Ireland. In his own words, it's the best gym currently going in Ireland due to the bevy of active fighters that they have, to sort of just be in the gym to be a regular sparring partner for you. There's a lot of active professional fighters that are on those mats every day. So I totally get what he's coming from there. A lot of quality sparring partners. Speaking of, Reese McKee makes a debut in this. So it was good to see Reese back on the UFC broadcast here. He makes a cameo. He's big up in Patty. He's talking about, UFC, you've got the right guy. This is the guy right here. So always good to see Reese pop up there, and he's doing so, supporting the Irishman himself, Paddy McCrory. We then cut back to the Ultimate Fighter house. Alexa is actually apologizing to her team for not taking them out as much as Valentina's team. She's like, "I'm sorry, this isn't as fun as it is for them, but we're here to do real work. Like I'm here to tell you guys, like, this is war, like all these good mantras that a coach should be telling them." And immediately the team, mostly Robert Valentine, who we're gonna touch on later here in the episode, mostly him are basically saying, like, Alexa, like, you don't have to apologize at all. This is how we prefer it to be. We are here to do hard work, and the hard work is being done with Alexa Grasso's team. So yeah, it's something that they have her back on there, and they actually refuted her apology. They didn't want it at all. We then cut back to Patty here, and this is something I don't know why they kept doing this. Like, we kept going out of sequence with, we were learning about Mark, and then all of a sudden we're on helicopter rides, and then we're back here at the house and we're learning for Patty about a few minutes, and then we're for some reason resolving this non-existent beef between Alexa and her team, just to cut back to Patty talking about his upbringing. We should have just had them all in their own sections, but we're going to bring you through the episode as it happened here. So sorry if you get lost in the ways here. So Patty talks about how when he was younger, in his teen years, when he became legal to drink, drinking and partying were a struggle of his when he was younger. He eventually then found MMA and found a new purpose in the gym. He became obsessed with it pretty instantly, based on his account, and really, really just became obsessed with the notion of improving. He always wanted to be better every time he left the gym. And it's something you can just tell in the confliction of his voice. He really means what he's saying. He says that he feels pretty comfortable as the underdog. He's been the underdog in a lot of his fights recently, so he's not really bothered by that at all. He does love the opportunity of proving people wrong. It's something that he's going to bring this up a lot as well. So his motives are pretty clear for us as far as we can tell. He really wants to be an example for the younger generation, says he's going to scream Belfast every chance he gets, because he wants to show people that if you're from there, you can overcome things and you can make it to the top level. He then brings up he especially wants to be a good role model for his younger brother that we mentioned earlier, and then he begins to tear up. Actually, gets really emotional about this, and then so we sort of have a short pause, and then he comes back to the camera and tells us, he says a lot of people in Belfast are either selling or hooked on drugs. So for that reason, he wants to show his brother a good example. The more we learn about Paddy McCrory, the more of a stand-up guy he becomes to be. He's doing this for all the right reasons. He's trying to set a good example. So, how can you not support a guy like that? again, we're going flip-flopping back and forth. So now we're back to Mark. Mark is talking about how he has a motorcycle crash a couple of years ago where someone hits him during the crash on the side of the motorcycle where he recently injured one of his ankles. This was a huge setback for him because at the time, the ankle injury before the crash, it sort of sidelined him for a while. Honestly, sometimes you'll hear fighters say that they go a little bit crazy when they don't have a fight lineup for a while. So he's sort of experiencing a little bit of that, as well as just like career pressure from, the struggles of wanting to make it in the MMA world. So he felt just lost in general. His sister tells him about this mountain in Cape Town, South Africa. It's like sort of like a religious space where people go to find like a spiritual answer to things in their life. At least that's the best that I could take from that little excerpt that he told us about it. So he takes a trip to Cape Town, not by car, not by boat, not by plane. He walked there from his hometown, which is 900 miles away. That is not in kilometers for those of you across the sea, but it is a lot more in kilometers. It's a very, very long walk. And it actually took him about 50 days. He said, yeah, for all the nights he was either sleeping on the side of the road in a tent or in a parking lot in a tent. He really sort of roughed it that entire time, but he shows us selfies of him throughout the entire process, always smiling. He said that he really enjoyed that. And he's telling this to Rudy, who's a fellow South African in the house, and Rudy's really impressed by that, and he brings up the fact that he read somewhere that South Africa is the fifth most dangerous country in the world. Um, Again, we go back to sort of like why Mark is fighting in the first place. It says that he really wasn't much of a student, so fighting spoke to him more. This is a classic story of a guy who's wants to chase his dreams, doesn't want to work the regular 9 to 5 and answer to a boss like everyone else does, or at least that's what he says. So, this is a story that we're familiar with in the MMA space. He trains in the city of Victoria at CIT Boxing as well. Again, this is a part of the episode where Dana's bringing up the big experience gap right before the fight. They both make weight successfully, no drama on the scale this time, which is always good news. And then we sort of cut to the backyard, and it's Patty talking with Robert Valentin, his teammate, and they're just sort of talking about the fight. Patty's got his eyes closed for this whole conversation because he's just visualizing different positions. He's talking about how when they break the clinch against the cage, he's going to throw those elbows short right away. He's going to be very patient on defense. He's going to sort of even let Mark tire his arms out if they get into grappling exchanges and be very patient there. Robert the whole time is sort of giving him good feedback as well. Robert Valentine is he's sort of like become the elder statesman of this core, even though they're all peers together and they're all trying to accomplish the same thing. Like he's always in the corner for all of these fights for Team Grasso. He's always giving people advice in the gym. Like if you didn't see the first couple episodes here, you would think he was just one of the coaches. Um, and we've talked about how much of a leader he is here, but Patty in particular has a very strong bond with Robert, and that's very clear to see throughout this episode. They sort of keep going back and forth, but Patty has found some solace in Robert Valentine in his coaching, so we love to see that as well. So into the fight itself at the UFC Apex Center. So we get some big rights from Mark early as he catches a kick from Patty McCoy. Patty goes to throw a body kick. Mark catches it right away. Those rights come straight down the pipe, and he immediately, soon after, takes Patty down to the ground. And this is all within the first 10 seconds of the fight. So if you're watching this as a Patty McCoy fan, this is a worst case scenario right out of the gate. And right as soon as he gets to the ground, he immediately goes for his back. Patty is eventually able to fight his way back up to his feet. Only for a second. He's then shortly returned back to the ground, back up. Then he can't break the grip of Mark once they're back on the ground. Robert is very vocal in the corner because they're right in front of the Alexa Grasso team corner. So Robert's right there telling Patty exactly what to do. Very calm, very clear, concise speaking in the corner. Very important. I think it's easy for cornermen to sort of yell and sort of be unclear in those high pressure situations. So it's good that Robert has that calm voice in the heat of battle for Patty to listen to. Hume then throws him back down twice. Patty just keeps sort of getting back up, but Hume throws him down violently. Not necessarily, not exactly a slam, but sort of in between that. He has the grip on his stomach, and he's just using that to sort of return him back to the mat. He lands some ground and pound on Patty, but not too much. He then eventually gets his back fully with the hooks locked in, only shortly. He doesn't really lock in his submission, doesn't do any damage either. But then Patty eventually is able to roll over and get back up. They're still clenched against the cage, and Mark uses this opportunity to make a big knee to the face on Patty, which gets a big reaction out of him. And then this is where Mark makes a mistake by going in for a takedown very lazily, not conscious of where his head is. And as soon as his head is under the armpit of Patty, Patty immediately wraps up the arms and goes for a guillotine. He sold out for it completely, and that thing was tight right away. And then with 140 left in the round, Mark Hume taps. Patty celebrates in the cage. He's just got the victory there. And it's honestly, outside of the kick that he threw to start the first round, it's the only offense that Patty's been able to get off is his one submission attempt. And as soon as he got one locked in, he was able to tap Mark Hume without much resistance there. Excellent, nasty choke. He stayed patient the whole fight. You know, for a guy who doesn't have a lot of experience, you would sort of expect him to panic in that situation. But Patty didn't do that. He fought like an experienced guy against the experienced guy. Did not panic at all, was very patient, didn't try to overcompensate for some tough positions that he was in. Was very impressed by the way he handled himself there. He even yells at Dana through the cage afterwards. He says, "Dana, don't worry about me. I got a solid chin." Dana says he loves performance. He is a big fan early on, which is massive for your chances to get in the UFC. So love to see that for Patty. He even calls the victory dream come true to get a victory in the Ultimate Fighter house. So it feels like a big monkey off his back to get the first one under the belt there. And now we can sort of just focus on the matchup at hand. A lot less emotions, hypothetically, going into this next fight for him. So should be good there. He then even cries tears of joy in the locker room right after. And who is there to pat him on the back? It's Robert Valentine. Again, he's always there. He's always present. So yeah, you can tell how much this win meant for Patty. And so to see it go down the way they did, it was awesome for him. So very happy for the man from Belfast. And then eventually we see Mark, very different dynamic in his locker room, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, as they say. Mark just sort of basically says that, Patty was the better fighter. He made a stupid mistake in there. It is what it is. A very mature response here. A lot of guys that we've even seen on this season have handled the losses a lot worse. And I think, honestly, this is due to his experience. Like, this is a guy who's been there, done that. Perhaps not on a stage as big as this, but, this is a guy who knows how to take a loss. So that was encouraging to see as well. So we now go into matchmaking room at the Apex, and Dana sits down with Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko, and they sort of go over who they think is the best in the house at each weight class and who they would like to see fight each other in the semifinals. And then Dana brings in the fighters one by one, and he asks all of them the same question: who do you think is the best in the house? Who do you think is the easiest path for you to fight to get to the finals after that? And a couple of interesting answers there. Robert, in a very Yuri Prochazka way, which we have compared him to that in the past, but like he's just the only guy that I think talks like this. He basically promises like blood and violence to Dana, and Dana's just licking his chops sitting there. He's like, I love that. One of the questions here, which I thought was interesting, I felt like it was a trick question. Sometimes when you go for job interviews, which is basically what this Ultimate Fighter experience is for these guys, they might ask you a trick question like, oh, like, what's your biggest weakness? And they're looking for you to say a specific answer. That's kind of how I felt about Dana's who do you think is the easiest fight for you answer, or question, I should say. And Rudy, who I'm a big fan of already, passes with flying colors. He says, I'm not here for easy fights, Dana. I want the toughest guys available. And Dana's like, I love that. Great answer. So Dana's sort of testing the guys here. And then Patty gets in. Patty has great chemistry with Dana White. Again, big thumbs up. Stuff we'd love to see. He says Ryan Loder, the D1 All-American wrestler, is the guy that he's wanted to fight since day one of this Ultimate Fighter competition. He says that, he thinks that he can beat him. He likes to prove that he can beat wrestlers. He's got the style to do that, and he's going to do that in a manner in which he gets a finish as well. So hopefully Patty gets that fight here, but he will not get it in the semifinals, because in the semifinals at middleweight, Ryan Loder is taking on Omran Shaban. Interesting fight there. We will see that one later on down the line. Another featherweight fight, Rudy Roots. He's going to be fighting Khan Offley. And then we'll also have at featherweight Myron Santos versus our friend with that interesting name, Ziggy. That's going to be a great fight as well. Myron Santos had a great performance in his last showing, so really excited to see that happen. But here's the kicker. There's two names I haven't mentioned yet that we've been talking about all episode. The final middleweight fight of the semifinals is Paddy McCrory versus none other than his best friend in the house, Robert Valentine. Now, you could say, oh, well, if this is a bracket, then eventually they have to fight. Like, I get it. No. Like, Dana asked them who they wanted to fight. They told him neither Robert nor Patty said they wanted to fight the other. They did not have to do this. This was a completely unforced clash that they had here. I don't understand it. Well, I should say I did understand it until Dana White talks about it, and he says they're best friends from Team Grasso, and my favorite thing is when teammates fight. Why? Why is that your favorite thing? I don't get it. It sort of made me think about Aljamain Sterling and Morale, but I felt bad for those guys because it seemed like, based on what Dana's saying here, he was probably pushing really hard for that fight to happen. Yeah. So, I mean, ideally, like if you're in Robert and Patty's shoes, right? They both want them to succeed. They both want the other guy to succeed in the tournament, but obviously they're both middleweights. There's only going to be one winner of the season, So I guess they would say, like, ideally maybe they would face each other in the next round so they both can compete in the finale together, but like I don't know, man. Like it just seems a little underhanded and a bit unfair to the guys to sort of do that to them this at this point in the tournament. So who knows? I think honestly, like if you wanted to go with like the teammates fighting thing, you could have told a lot better story by building it up through several weeks and months leading up to the actual finale, which would be live, and then people buy tickets for it, obviously. So to sort of throw that drama away on a semifinal fight on an Ultimate Fighter season that, let's be honest, outside of myself and Ian O'Neill, I think there's probably like a dozen other people watching this thing worldwide. It just feels like a waste. Not only that, but they're both like excellent talent. So I don't know why you'd want to have one of them beat the other out of the competition. So who knows? At the end of the day, Dana is a professional matchmaker at the highest level, has been for decades at this point. So who am I to judge? But yeah, I digress. But yeah, that was this episode, episode 8 of the Ultimate Fighter season 32. We have episode 9 next week. Maybe I'll be alone again. Maybe I won't. Who knows? At this point, I don't even know. So we'll get that sorted out here. But yeah, episode 9 next week. We're gonna have a bunch of these semifinals going on at the time, so that'll be exciting to watch. So until then, if you want to catch up on the rest of this season of the Ultimate Fighter season 32, you can click on this YouTube channel here at SevereMMA. We have all breakdowns of the previous episodes, and we will have those coming for the future episodes when they debut here. But that will be it for me here. This is once again Theo Lander for SevereMMA signing off for the night.